Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is, and welcome back. It is great to see you. It has been a busy week. Trump's developing carpal tunnel syndrome. Just kidding, he's used to this, built for this. All over the place. I saw somebody did, what's it called, an ASMR, those videos where you just listen to those sounds of like a lawnmower or a train or something like that. Somebody created an ASMR video of 60 minutes of Trump's signing executive orders. Just it's hilarious. So if you're into it, look that one up. But it's a beautiful day, my friends. We've got an amazing stream planned ahead. Trump has ordered a blackout to take place across a number of different agencies. And so we'll see what agencies are included in that. But it's happening simultaneous with a deportation, which is happening right now. CBS just came out with an order saying the Border Patrol got new orders from the president and people are being deported. And so we'll go through all of that. And then we'll see this little back and forth between Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Marjorie Taylor Greene, because they were in there today and AOC was very unhappy with the state of affairs, screaming about pardons and all the things. Then Marjorie Taylor Greene came back out and responded. And so there was some fun business happening in the House that we'll talk about. Bolton, very unhappy with what's happening to him. He no longer has Secret Service protection because he was a partisan hack over these last 4 years. And he's upset about it, whining about it on with Jake Tapper. Then we're going to revisit the pardons from the J6 saga and this fun headline from Axios. Trump just said, F it, man. Release them all. Just F it. And so we'll come back and we'll see. That's exactly appropriate. That is the right political decision to make. And of course, Trump nailed it. Judge Chutkan is furious about the J6 pardons and she's throwing a hissy fit in her courtroom. We got Chuck Schumer who's crying about it. And then Tim Burchett and Marco Rubio both came out and delivered the ruckus back the other way. Then we've got an update on a new J6 investigation. It's going to move over to the Judiciary Committee. Jim Jordan will be leading that. And so the J6 saga is not over. It's just beginning. The Federalist is reporting on that. Molly Hemingway, of course. So we'll look through all of that. We got Enrique Tarrio, who got released from custody. And we have an update on the Florida classified documents case, as well as a house cleaning that's already underway at the DOJ. Then we've got some fun video of Trump. He got his hands on that Biden letter that was in the desk. So we got the video of that. Yesterday, the video cut off and we were like, did he find the letter? Well, he did find the letter and he almost read it out loud. But it turns out we have the contents of the letter. It's not interesting. Joe Biden probably didn't even write it, or they gave him some crayons again. Like, just scribble a bus, Joe. Okay. Put a bus out there. And birds, seagulls, and a sun with a smiley face and sunglasses. So we'll see if that is actually what's in the letter. Ducey got his hands on it, and he is revealing it to all of us. We'll talk about the Kamala situation with Backhand Doug, because now Kamala is blaming him. Apparently the word of the day in Kamala HQ is Deadweight. Whoa, for Doug. For Backhand Doug, man, that's not good. Kamala better be careful. You know, Doug doesn't take kindly to being offended, you know. So we'll see what happens there. And then we got some follow-up on these pardons because, man, you guys have been asking some great questions. Rob, you know, how does this work? And I'm like, oh, let me look it up. So we've been looking some stuff up, in particular about court martials, because a great question came up. Can a court martial be in effect against somebody like Milley? Short answer, I think, is no. And so we'll come back on that one. But another great question about Lieutenant Byrd from Sergeant GPS this morning was, what if Lieutenant Byrd got pardoned, the guy who shot Ashley Babbitt and killed her? Could we do something to prosecute him at the state level? And the question is, was he pardoned at all? And I pulled up the January 6th report. I don't think so. I don't think he testified to the J6 committee. So I don't think he's covered. So we got a bunch of great stuff to get to today, my friends. Really glad that you're here. I hope your week is unfolding beautifully and you're basking in the winning glow as the golden age unfolds before us. Let's jump right into it. You see this story The president ordered a blackout across various agencies that deserve it. You see this article from the Washington Post saying that this is going to cause chaos and havoc because they're not going to be able to communicate with each other, to lie to each other about why they need more government money and why we should be receiving subpar healthcare. But here's the blackout, as it's being called. From the Washington Post, they say Trump officials are now pausing health agencies' communications, citing a review. And we've also seen this happening in other domains. For example, Marco Rubio sent a cable out. He just got confirmed as our Secretary of State, and he sent out a big fat cable to everybody and said, guess what? We're changing everything. So whatever you're currently doing, stop it and provide us reports. Trump is also closing DEI offices all across the country. It's happening rapidly. So here's what they tell us. They say the Trump administration has now instructed federal health agencies to pause all external communications like health advisories, weekly scientific reports, updates to its websites, social media posts, and more. The instructions were delivered on Tuesday to staff at various agencies that then leaked them to the Washington Post one day after the new administration took office. This is according to someone who spoke on condition of anonymity. And we'll see how long that lasts. We're going to find out who that is, and you're gone. Some people familiar with the matter acknowledge that they expected some review during the transition. They were confused by the pause's scope and indeterminate length. The health agencies are charged with making decisions that touch the lives of every American, which is part of the problem because they touch us inappropriately and are the source of crucial information to healthcare providers and blah. They say the pause on communications includes scientific reports issued by the corrupt CDC, known as morbidity and mortality weekly reports, which people question, and advisories sent out to clinicians on their Health Alert Network and elsewhere. The CDC was scheduled to publish a bunch of stuff. Trump said, don't do it. It was not clear from the guidance given the new administration whether the directive will affect more urgent comms like new outbreaks. Stephanie Spear, HHS Deputy Chief of Staff, instructed the agency staff Tuesday morning, you guys better pause your external communications or else. That person, Stephanie, is a longtime ally of RFK Jr., who has not yet had his confirmation hearings or that we've seen scheduled yet. So this is happening. Now, if the communication pause lasts, they say this could be concerning. Another person from the Trump administration may need time to set up systems, and so they're trying to figure out what this means exactly. And so agencies are scurrying about now that a new boss is in town. Now, while that's happening, there's a blackout in the CDC and all these other so-called health agencies. There's also a deportation that is underway, and it's happening right now, according to CBS News. You see, this report came out. They told us that on January 22nd, agents have now been told to summarily deport illegals without granting asylum hearings under a new Trump edict. They're offended. Asylum. Because Biden was exploiting the law and handing those out like they were Skittles on Halloween. And it's not Halloween. This is America. So here's the report telling us that out of Washington, citing Trump's extraordinary move after he signed all those executive orders to close the American asylum system, it's closed, border agents have been instructed to summarily deport illegals crossing into the country illegally without allowing them to request legal protection, according to internal government documents and agency officials. Just hours after being sworn in, Mr. Trump invoked sweeping presidential authorities to bar the entry of migrants deemed to be participating in the invasion of the U.S., as well as those who may pose a public health or national security risk. He cited a section of the law called 212 subsection F that allows presidents to suspend the entry of foreigners whose entry is deemed to be detrimental to the U.S. Now, in that same proclamation, he also cited his constitutional powers over foreign affairs to empower U.S. officials to repel, repatriate, and remove any alien engaged in the invasion across the southern border of the United States. Internal government documents indicate that as of Tuesday night, the president's full authority was being implemented across the Texas border with Mexico, making nearly all migrants who arrived there subject to quick expulsion. The documents cite the public health-related authority that applies to aliens traveled through a country with a communicable disease. And Trump's edict also applies to Border Patrol coastal sectors like Florida and Canada. And the document indicates that Canadian authorities will be asked to accept those who come in from Canada illegally. Two Customs and Border Protection officials who requested anonymity to discuss this guidance said migrants will not be allowed to see an immigration judge or an asylum officer under Trump's edict, which effectively suspends U.S. obligations under domestic and international law to ensure people fleeing persecution, which is everybody, are not returned to danger. One of the officials said Border Patrol agents were directed to swiftly deport migrant adults and families traveling with children under the president's directives after taking their biometrics and their fingerprints. Migrants who are not from Mexico are to be detained pending their deportation. Those with criminal histories are also subject to prosecution here. Releases of migrants into the U.S. have been largely prohibited. The internal government documents say requests to release migrants with a court notice will need to be approved by HQ and will only be considered in life-threatening situations. Okay, so you're not being released at all. Isn't it amazing how just quickly this changed? And do you think that this is going to cause more people to come to the border or less people to come to the border? The official said the new policy mirrors Title 42, a far-reaching order the first Trump administration enacted at the outset of the global pandemic, so-called. Illegally, the order, based upon a contested public health rationale that migrants would spread COVID, was eventually discontinued when Biden took over. Joe Biden's asylum restrictions had a major exemption. They did not apply to migrants waiting in Mexico who used a smartphone app so that they could DoorDash themselves into the country. But immediately after Biden's inauguration, his administration shut Trump's inauguration. His administration shut it off. No more DoorDash, which had been allowing up to 1,500 migrants to enter the U.S. every day. Just insane numbers every time you hear that. While the Biden administration faced record numbers of migrant arrivals, those numbers dropped after 2020 once they started to enforce the border because they realized they were going to lose the election. Trump moves at the border are now also going into birthright citizenship, which is going to be a fun issue to dig into. We'll go through those lawsuits in due course and see why the current iteration of birthright citizenship is a misinterpretation of the statute. So this, as you can see, the ACLU and others are going to be going nuts on this, and people are going to be put in danger. Yeah, so are Americans every day from the illegal invasion that's happening at our border. We're sick of it. So they can go back to their home countries and apply for asylum there. So you can see Carolyn Leavitt is out, the White House spokeswoman, and she's explaining we're also sending active duty troops down to the border. We're not playing around anymore.
Yes. What is he doing this afternoon? I believe it was Reuters who broke the news that President Trump signed an executive order of 1,500 additional troops to the United States southern border. This comes off of his day one action, as I just talked about on Fox News, to direct the Department of Defense to make Homeland Security a core mission of the agency. This is something President Trump campaigned on. The American people have been waiting for such a time as this, for our Department of Defense to actually take Homeland Security seriously. This is a number one priority of the American people, and the president is already delivering.
But can you what will those troops be doing?
1,500 additional troops going down there, and we're securing the border with haste. Now, in Congress today, we had a battle between AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And so I've got both of them queued up here. We'll listen to a little bit of AOC, see how much we can take. And then we'll jump over to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is responding in kind, saying, you know, it actually would be nice to put illegals who are breaking the law into prison or get them out of the country because they're breaking the law. So here's the back and forth between these two in Congress today, starting with AOC.
Mr. Speaker, I want the American people to know with eyes wide open what is inside this bill. Because we stand here just 2 days after President Trump gave unconditional pardons to violent criminals who attacked our nation's capital on January 6th. And these are the people who want you to believe, who want us to believe that they're trying to, quote unquote, keep criminals off the streets. They are opening the floodgates.
Those people were all arrested and punished. They were all incarcerated and invaded by the FBI and brutalized by our own government for many years. And so the punishment has now been alleviated because their due process was violated and their presumption of innocence was trampled upon in a rigged jurisdiction. So that's why that record has been corrected. And those were American citizens who we were having to write the record on. Okay, these are not American citizens who are breaking the law and coming into the country. Just pausing on that note.
I want the American people to know what is in this bill.
Okay, tell us.
Because in the guise and in the wake of tragedy, we are seeing a fundamental erosion of our civil rights. In this bill, if a person is so much as accused of a crime, if someone wants to point a finger and accuse someone of shoplifting, they will be rounded up and put into a private detention camp and sent out for deportation without a day in court.
Well, if they're not here legally or lawfully, they've already broken the law. So you investigate a potential crime just like anybody else who is investigated for a potential crime. If you walk out of the store with a bag full of items that you did not pay for, an officer is going to be called over to you, unless you're in California or someplace, and investigate you and say, I got a report here. I've got reasonable suspicion that you may have committed a crime because this person is a witness and they work here and they're security, loss prevention, and they see it. And if upon contacting you, that officer says, I need to see some ID because the law says you got to provide me with that. Well, I stop and ask for that. Provide me. You do. You're an illegal person. That's a new crime that has just been discovered, AOC. This is not rocket science. This is criminal procedure that happens every day in this country, all over the country. They just happen to find a new crime. Just like if they came up to you and you pulled out a crack pipe or something. Oh, you got crack on you. So is that illegal drug there? That's a new crime. You don't just get to, run away once a new crime is discovered. Gosh.
Without a moment to assert their right and without a moment to assert the privilege of innocent until proven guilty. Without being found guilty of a crime, they will be rounded up. That is what is inside this bill, a fundamental suspension of a core American value.
Just like anybody else would be arrested, okay? If you get pulled over and stopped for a DUI, they're going to arrest you and take you into custody. And if you're a fugitive, if you have a warrant out for your arrest and you're arrested for DUI, or let's say you're involved in a domestic violence situation, okay, this is much more applicable to many people. This happens all the time. You get into an argument, something breaks, a neighbor who's in the next apartment over calls the cops. You get arrested for nothing because your own plate broke when it fell off the counter. You go to jail for that. And if you're a fugitive, if you've got a warrant out for a felony arrest, they hold you in custody. This is until you can prove you got to get out of custody. Same situation is happening here. Why should illegals get a benefit that other American citizens don't get if they're in violation of the law and caught up on a new crime?
And that is why I rise to oppose it. If you're a dreamer, all someone has to do is point a finger and you will be rounded up. And we have seen moments like these happen before. In the Patriot Act, in the wake of the travesty of 9/11, a fundamental suspension of American civil liberties.
Yeah, we oppose that too, AOC. Are you calling for the repeal of the Patriot Act?
What we are seeing here today. Mr. Speaker, you may wonder why so many of our friends across the aisle who care so deeply about the rule of law happen to be so desperate to pass this bill after they are unleashing people who attacked police officers here on this Capitol into roaming our streets, who are publicly saying now they want to get a gun. Suddenly,
Jacob Chansley, shout out. Man, I hope he gets something nice.
These folks care about public safety? I don't think so. Look no further than the price tag of this bill, $83 billion.
Is there a Jacob Chansley fund? Is that legal?
$1 They know that it can't be paid for. They know that the capacity is not there. And you know what will be there? Private prison companies are going to get flooded with money, who give this money, no doubt. I want folks at home to look. Look at what members of Congress are invested in private prison companies who receive this kind of money, and look at the votes on this bill. It is atrocious that people are lining their pockets with private prison profits in the name of a horrific tragedy and the victim of a crime. It is shameful. It is absolutely shameful.
Okay, so we're getting into the lecture, scolding, shameful. You're all bad, racist losers. Okay, AOC, we get it. Keep screaming and scowling at us. That's fine. We'll see how that works out for you. All right, so Marjorie Taylor Greene says, yeah, I mean, actually, if we identify these people who are in the country illegally, then they have to be detained, just like any other person who is in an illegal status in this country is detained. If you're on a felony warrant, you're on an unlawful status. You cannot be let go. Same thing with somebody who's in the country illegally. Here's Marjorie responding.
Thank you. Well, I certainly hope we do open as many prisons as possible to round up as many illegal aliens that have invaded our country and those that are breaking our laws, killing our citizens, women and children, and causing complete havoc across our great land. I support the Laken Riley Act, and I support the Laken Riley Act because Laken Riley should be alive today.
That's right.
And she would be alive today if it hadn't have been for the Democrats and the Biden administration that ripped our border open and allowed this illegal alien monster to come into our country. And then in the state of New York, when this monster was arrested for committing crimes, the Democrat state of New York let him go. And that's how he came down to Georgia and murdered our Laken Riley. This is a bill that cannot get passed enough, and I'm so thankful that the American people overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump so that we can sign this bill into law, and it can't happen fast enough. Thank God. But listening to my colleagues, the Democrats on the other side of the aisle, complain and whine and defend illegal aliens that break the law the minute they cross our border is pathetic. The American people are so sick and tired of it.
Totally.
They cannot believe what our country has gone through. And it is enough. It is absolutely enough. But they will go on and on to defend anyone that is not American because of their America Last policies. You talk about tax dollars used. Our tax dollars should be used defending Americans. And you want to talk about spending a lot of money? Spending a lot of money should happen for American causes, American purposes, and American security. Laken Riley is a young woman who should be living her American dream, and she had the right to do it. But people that come across our border illegally are not Americans, and they do not have rights here. And that is exactly why anytime they break a law, anytime they cross into our country, they should be rounded up and shipped out as fast as possible. And if we need to build more prisons, then we'll do it. Because the American people will support it. Thank you, Chair. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields.
Thank you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for speaking out and speaking the truth on this. You can see the contrast, right? It's unbelievable. AOC is screaming about people who are in the country illegally, who are responsible for causing chaos all over the country. I'm sure that there are individuals in there who are good people, like Trump said, but by and large, okay, the problem with the Democratic immigration policy is it's unchecked, it's unregulated, it's entirely chaotic, and so the system is overwhelmed, and so there's no more room for this patty cake game of, well, there's some good people and not good people in asylum and all this crap, and you're a racist if you don't play this stupid game. No one cares anymore, okay? It's cut off. We're done. And what AOC is doing is advocating for the opposite side. She's like advocating for the invasion and for people who are, by being here, are in open violation of the law. And she might, well, it's asylum, and Joe Biden carved out this little insane exception for them. And so that justifies them for being here. They're exploiting the nature and the purpose of the system, and the Democrats know that. And they're still on the House floor screaming about this, can't even recognize the fact that citizens are tired of being murdered, having their jobs taken, having our cities dilapidated around us. Enough of it already. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene is delivering, and we're happy to hear about that. Now, there's other changes that are happening. We've got a blackout in CDC land. We've got the Laken Riley Act, which is looking like it's moving forward over to the Senate. And in fact, I just saw this from Senator Katie Britt, and she was giving us a walkthrough of what's going to be happening next with that bill. And it was a fun video. So let me share that with us before we continue on. What happens next with the Laken Riley Act? Senator Katie Britt from Alabama is now going to be explaining what happens. It's going to make its way over to the other house and then back and forth, and we'll see if it is successful to land on Trump's desk.
Okay, so I've gotten the question, what happens next with the Laken-Riley Act? So we just left the Senate chamber, which is where we passed this bill on Monday. If you look down the hall, these are the doors to the House chambers, kind of all the way down. That's where the bill goes today. So it's exciting. On Monday, we made this bill even stronger. We added Senator Ernst's amendment, which is Sarah's law. It's to honor Sarah Root, who was murdered, was killed 9 years ago by an illegal alien who was drunk driving with a blood alcohol level of 3 times what it should have been. We also added Senator John Cornyn's amendment that adds assault of a police officer to the list of crimes. So we're excited to send this even stronger version of Laken-Riley Act over to the House, where it'll receive final passage today. So that happens at 4:30, and then after that, we send it to President Trump's desk, and we're going to make sure that America is stronger, America is more secure, and that we're doing good things to actually achieve results for each of you. So tune in. Thanks.
Nicely done, Senator Britt. And another stark contrast to AOC scolding everybody else for being so racist and offensive to illegals. All right, so good updates there. Now let's move on over to this fun story. F it! President Trump said, release them all. There was a debate taking place about how to split the pie with it came to the January 6th pardons, and the president did the right thing and told the entire room, F it. This is how it's happening. The report comes out from Axios, and we're going to read through what happened in the room, and we'll follow this up with reaction from many people who are upset with the pardons and crying about it, like Judge Chutkan, the judge who was trying to incriminate and prosecute Trump, in my opinion, colluding with Jack Smith, but we'll come back to that. But here's what happened during those final hours and minutes. Trump's sweeping pardon for 1,500 J6 defendants were a last-minute rip-the-bandage-off decision to try to move past the issue quickly, they say. This came according to White House advisors that are familiar with the discussion. Trump's move to go big on the pardons sheds light on his unpredictable decision-making process, they say, which is ridiculous because this was contemplated this entire campaign. We had conversations with J6 people like Adam Johnson, the lectern leader, talking about how do we do these things? Should it be immediate? Should it be slow? Should it be a case-by-case basis? Should it be a uniform pardon? Should we split it between violent and non-violent? And how do you decide that? Was a water bottle that hit a cop in the head violent? How do you know? And it shows Trump's determination to fulfill his campaign promise. And of course, he did that. Now, they call this his MAGA base, but I think it's much broader than that. I think a large part of the country recognized what a sham and a charade the entire J6 scam was. And Trump's presidency, I think J6 was one of the biggest conspiracies of our time, if not the biggest conspiracy. We watched it all play out right in front of our eyes. We watched the buildup. We watched the cover-up happen in the aftermath. We saw the event. And they tried to steal the next election, which was this one, and then all of the other subsequent elections using this. They called it like the Civil War, the biggest attack on American democracy since the Civil War. They were framing it as the biggest thing that had happened in our lifetimes, like bigger than Pearl Harbor, okay? Because Pearl Harbor came after the Civil War. Bigger than 9/11. They said it was bigger than those things. They were nuts. So Trump came in and corrected the record on that. If he does nothing else this entire term, he's already been successful with this presidency, just simply for clearing up that blemish on American history and righting this wrong. But here's how it happened. 8 days before the inauguration, Vice President-to-be J.D. Vance, channeling what he believed was Trump's thinking, was doing the split. Violent versus non-violent. Saying if you committed violence, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. Now, Trump vacillated, they say, during an internal debate over targeted clemency versus a blanket decision. But as Trump's team wrestled with this issue and planned a shock and awe batch of executive orders on day one, Trump came out and just said, F it! Release them all! An advisor familiar with the discussions said, and then took a nice sip of his ice-cold Diet Coke. Trump's decision was a surprise to some Republicans who grimaced over this. And I can't stand any of that. Grimaced over what? They just pardoned Liz Cheney and Fauci. And Biden pardoned people who murdered FBI agents and did other horrendous things. And no J6ers murdered FBI agents. In fact, it's probably the opposite. On January 7th, the day after his supporters rioted, Trump decried those who defiled the building, but as his own, which was, Ray Epps and those guys, but as his own legal problems mounted during his campaign, he began to embrace this cause. What? This article's dumb. Early in the internal discussions, Vance actually advocated for a blanket pardon. A case-by-case review was onerous. And this is part of the counterpoint to this. Well, if we did a case-by-case review, we would have had some benefits there because we could have identified all those undercover confidential human sources or CHS adjacent individuals who were in the crowd clearly. And we know that in the Proud Boys trial, the government admitted that the FBI had 8 of them and there were only 5 Proud Boys on trial. So more FBI Fed adjacent folks there than there were defendants in the criminal case. And that number got exponential by a factor of 10 when you include Homeland Security investigations. Were any of those people charged? Ray Epps was charged as the FBI's most wanted, and he got a pardon and a slap on the wrist, and Liz Cheney lifted him up on her giant shoulders. Time was running out heading into the inauguration. Trump said, let's just get it over with. He said, let's just do it. Vance was 100% on board, said one Trump insider. Trump advisors say they aren't worried about the political fallout. I agree. I don't think there's going to be any fallout. They believe J6 was already litigated. Trump won. It's done. So they can keep crying about it all they want for the next 4 years. I hope they do. Keep crying about it. Let's see. Because we want to keep some fire on this one. We don't want to just take this pot off the stove. We want to let this puppy cook. And we want the Judiciary Committee to look into it. And we want subpoenas. And anybody who was not pardoned on that list should be part of the scrutiny. And those who got pardons should be scrutinized. Actually, more. Because now they can't claim self-incrimination privileges. But this was something that was good news. The president didn't change his mind. He just made up his mind. And JD got a little over his skis on Fox, said someone. Not a big deal. Now, I also think that Trump is very good at this, but he does A/B testing with this. So I would not put it past the campaign or the team at the time, transition team, from having JD just kind of go talk a little bit about it. Okay. And JD went out, well, we're going to do violent versus the non-violent. And then there was some backlash on X about that. People, no. Because they said that the violent people were throwing water bottles and trash. Oh, an empty Pepsi can hit somebody in the face. That's aggravated assault with aluminum. All right. And finally, the record has been corrected. So there's a lot of crying about this, and we'll go back and forth and look at some crying and then some rebuttals. But here was what Judge Chutkan said. Remember Judge Chutkan, the J6 judge who was handling the Trump prosecution in Washington, D.C. for the J6 case. The J6 case is already dismissed and long gone because Trump won the election and Jack Smith ran away because he's not even a real boy and he had to shred all of his files and try to get the report out before Trump came into power. So she came out and she dropped this in another case and is saying, no pardon. This is the judge. Okay, this is her ranting screed because she lost everything. She worked overtime with Jack Smith. She wanted to accelerate the trial. Then the case got taken away from her from the Supreme Court because she was trying to prosecute it illegally by not considering immunity, which obviously existed. So she had to have it paused, went up to the Supreme Court, everything. She threw a fit back then, tried to do it anyways. So she's just, devastated, crushed with all of these recent developments. So she's, this is her big final climactic event. I hope you enjoyed it, Chutkan. She says more broadly, no pardon can change the tragic truth of what happened on J6. And what's so dumb about this, it's hilarious, is she's citing other cases in her own district. Okay, it's great. She says on that day, a mob professing support for President Trump violently attacked the Capitol. And then she cites Trump versus Thompson, right? DC circuit case. She's citing her own circuit. All right. So, great. So you're referencing yourself? Just say it. Chutkin. We know you just want to say it. Don't have to cite other sources for your propaganda. Well, I cited to other bad cases of propaganda. So it's valid now. Why? Because you cited it? Because you blue booked it? All right. The dismissal of this case cannot do the rampage that left multiple people dead, like Ashley Babbitt, who you guys shot and killed, like Roseanne Boylan, who was beaten outside the Capitol, injured more than 140 people, and inflicted millions of dollars in damage, unlike the billions that was caused during the Summer of Love, when they burned the entire police precinct down to the ground. How much of millions was that? Cannot diminish law enforcement. Again, she cites another case, okay, from her own jurisdiction. She's like, I'm going to talk to my other friend's case, and I'm citing my best friends over here case. Pathetic. It cannot whitewash the blood, feces, and terror. Feces probably from Joe Biden as he was waddling around, but it cannot repair the jagged breach in this tradition of transitioning of power, blah, blah, blah. So this is cope, as we know, the modern vernacular. Cope is what that is. And then Judge Howell also came out and said the same thing. And she's another horrible judge who worked overtime to try to breach Trump's rights and shattered his attorney-client privilege so that she could get emails and all this internal strategy and then pass it off to Jack Smith, who was illegal. And again, she's coping hard. She writes a whole screed about this. No national injustice occurred here, just like there was no election fraud. Yeah, there was. The CIA was involved in it. No process of national reconciliation can begin when poor losers, she says, as she's writing this as the biggest poor loser you've seen on the show today, whose preferred candidate loses an election and blah, blah, blah. So she's also furious. They lost. They were kids in the candy store ransacking everything that was inside when the clerk went behind the counter, went behind the wall there. And now they're just trying to cope their way into feeling better. I don't think it's going to work. They got 4 years of winning that we're going to be imposing upon them. Now, here is Chuck Schumer. We're going to get some responses here in a second from Tim Burchett, who comes back and slams Acosta, who's now known as Alasta because he lost another election. And Rubio is also hammering him back. But here's Schumer, again, crying and lying in front of America.
And sadly, it's a golden age for lawlessness and lawbreakers who were pardoned yesterday by President Trump. There is no other way to describe President Trump's pardon of January 6th offenders than un-American. It is so deeply un-American to do that, to pardon them.
What?
And let's be clear.
What about Joe's
President
8,000 pardons there? Was that un-American?
Didn't just pardon protesters. He pardoned individuals convicted of assaulting police officers.
Yeah, by a rigged court system in a rigged jurisdiction in 93% Kamala land.
He pardoned individuals convicted of seditious conspiracy. And he pardoned those who attempted to undermine our democracy. It's a betrayal of the highest order.
You guys pardoned people who undermined our democracy. They're called the J6 Committee. What do you think Liz Cheney did when she was suborning perjury from clavicle girl Cassidy?
Of our Capitol police officers who risked their lives to keep us safe. It just is so cruel to the Sitnick family who lost a police officer.
Oh, Chuck, you schmuck. How dare you imply that Brian Sicknick was killed that day? He died of natural causes, according to the Capitol Hill Police's own public post about it. I'm sorry that he passed away. Peace to his family for losing their son and loved one. But he wasn't killed by January 6th, so stop bringing his name up in the context there. Now, here is what happened when Tim Burchett was getting asked and reamed about this by Jim Acosta, who's back doing his old shtick. Can you believe this? We're going to have 4 more years of Jim Acosta. He was one of the most useless people over those last 4 years when we had him standing up. Mr. President, how can you say China virus, China racist, or bigot, xenophobia? For 4 years? We're going to have 4 more years of this? It's going to be great. All right, here's Acosta.
This is not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes.
Yeah.
This is CNN. This is the news. We are asking you to come on and tell the truth. And that's why more people are watching the Cartoon Network SpongeBob reruns right now, Jim. Look, I left the White House during a riot. My life was threatened. My life has been threatened within the last few weeks, yet there's no coverage of that. And you all continue this narrative of attacking Trump. You just can't stand the fact that he won and that America spoke.
Congressman,
and that,
no,
and that your
that's not
view
the
is
case.
very
That's
diminished.
not the case at all.
And your view is very diminished.
It is true, Jim. Your network is terrible. You guys are losing like $200 million, according to your own attorneys, who said, please don't give us punitive damages when you lost your other defamation case. So you're barely hanging on. And didn't Acosta go to like the 12 o'clock hour, 12 midnight hour or something? So he's probably on his way out. So good luck to him. But it's Rubio, who is now our new Secretary of State. This clip came over from Carly Bonney, great follow on X, sharing this one saying Rubio just got confirmed, okay? He's about to get out on the world stage and try to bring peace and civility after a tyrannical, insane residency from Joe Biden. And he gets asked this very ridiculous question.
My days, at least in the time I'm at Department of State, of engaging in domestic politics will be put aside as I focus on the affairs that the United States has around the world.
I mean, who's to say that if a crowd of folks who are displeased with something that happens at the Capitol in the future, who's to say that they don't just do it again?
Yeah, I know, and I understand. I mean, but I think it's unfortunate. You know, our first engagement is I agree to come on this morning with you. I'm going to be working on foreign policy issues, and you want to revisit these issues that are going on in domestic politics. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen.
You guys are begging to keep this issue alive because you think it is useful to you. I actually hope that they don't let it go. I hope we get some more questions and answers on this. They can keep talking about these J6ers and more. The real criminals were on the J6 committee. That's why they had to pardon themselves. And we're looking forward to a full investigation. And looks like we're getting closer to one. From the Federalist and our friend Molly Hemingway, she's reporting that the J6 investigation is now going to be moving to the Judiciary Committee. That's Jim Jordan presiding over that committeeship. And here's the report telling us that Cheney was pardoned by Joe because she's a criminal, but congressional investigators are going to continue to uncover the truth of what happened on the Capitol grounds on January 6th, including the presence of the FBI in the crowd, the pipe bomb, and other abuses conducted by the FBI. The new committee, led by Barry Loudermilk, will be established under the Judiciary Committee to continue the work of the previous Congress. This is according to multiple sources. Loudermilk led the previous effort. As chair of the Oversight Committee, they released and published 40,000 hours of footage and uncovered interviews that were suppressed by Cheney's committee, and referred Cheney for prosecution because she tampered with Cassidy Hutchinson, the star witness of the J6 charade. Hutchinson was a low-level aide. She changed her story, I think, during her third and fourth interview. Fourth interview, she came out. That's where the clavicle attack was birthed out of her interview with Liz and Clavicle. And then they published it to all of America. Johnson announced the work would be fully funded back in early January after Trump won, after Biden gave Liz Cheney the Presidential Citizens Medal, and before he gave her a pardon. He said the J6 committee manipulated and destroyed evidence. They created a fake, phony narrative all to try and hurt Trump. They even hired a TV producer from the legacy media in a desperate attempt to legitimize what Americans knew was a total hoax and a complete waste of time. Be assured of this. House Republicans will continue our investigation into this corrupt committee, and it will be fully funded so it can continue into the next Congress. Now, as noted, Loudermilk and his staff uncovered earlier transcribed interviews that they had suppressed because they were at odds with the fake narrative that they created. For instance, Cheney suppressed evidence that Trump pushed for 10,000 National Guard to be there, saying that they had no evidence to support his claims. They clearly did. They got testimony. In fact, an early interview conducted by a key committee included exactly that testimony. The interview, which Cheney personally attended, was suppressed. Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief of Staff, Tony Ornato, and his first transcribed interview was conducted with Cheney. He told them that he overheard the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, push Muriel Bowser to request as many National Guard as she needed. And there was also the letter from Bowser rejecting the National Guard. He also testified that Trump had suggested that 10,000 troops would be needed to keep the peace, and they rejected all of it. Ornato also described the White House and their frustration with Christopher Miller, the acting Secretary of Defense, and his slow deployment of assistance. Not only did the committee not accurately characterize that interview, it didn't release it publicly. On top of that, the committee allies began publishing other critical stories and even conspiracy theories about Ornato. And then Hutchinson came out and lied, in my opinion, didn't see anything, but didn't see him lunge at, Trump lunged and tried to grab the steering wheel and take the vehicle back to the Capitol. And then Melania was parasailing back there with a sniper rifle. Remember? Details about funding and the composition of the select subcommittee is still being arranged, but we'll see what it looks like when it is composed. All of this coming over from Molly Hemingway at The Federalist, a great follow and journo. You can see we've got other things happening now. After the pardons occurred, Henry Enrique Tarrio, the man who was not even in Washington, D.C. at the time of January 6th, who had already been banned from the city for a prior thing, is now released. And when he landed in Miami, he was surrounded by the media. And we're looking forward to seeing all these guys make the podcast rounds and correct the record on what really happened, because we covered this trial in depth. I basically think we read through transcripts every day of the Proud Boys trial, and we got to see what they did to them. And when you're in a position like them and you're a criminal defendant, there's only so much you can say. And we had heroes like one Proud Boy, I think it was Dominic Pizzola, came out and testified and spoke the truth and got convicted anyways. And we're excited to hear from him on the other side of this. But here's the scene when Enrique Tarrio was exiting the airport. Lots of media.
My friend, back please. Shirt, back please.
Cheers. Welcome home.
All right, Fox News, yeah.
Hugs and kisses. They charged this dude with seditious conspiracy. They went through a private chat on a Telegram, and they found a bunch of the worst things that can happen in a chat room. They assembled it and called it a seditious conspiracy. It was a joke and a setup.
Move back, please.
So shout out to Enrique finally being freed.
There you go. Talk to them. Don't talk to the laptop. Don't talk to the laptop conspirators. Here's the. Hey guys. Sorry.
It's a madhouse, okay? The media is there. This guy's going to have a lot of attention, as he should, and I am hopeful that when the time is right, that he or other Proud Boys and other people who are victims of this continue to speak out and keep the pressure on those who committed these crimes against them and against the country. Now, we've had some questions on this about pardons and presidential pardons and whether or not certain people who were pardoned by Joe Biden can be prosecuted and whether certain people were included in the pardon in the first place. And so we've pulled this up. This is the pardon from Joe Biden in his final days pardoning these individuals. And one question, of course, we know that Mark Milley got an explicit pardon, one for him by name. But what about other officers like Lieutenant Byrd, who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt, wasn't prosecuted for that? Could he be investigated? Here's what Joe said this pardon applies to. Says, all to whom these presents shall come greeting, be it known that I, corrupt Joe, have granted hereunto the following people: the members of Congress who served on the select committee to investigate the J6 attack on the Capitol. So that's Pencilneck, Raskin, Cheney, Kinzinger, Lofgren, Aguilar, and I think maybe one or two others. But all of them are pardoned. Benny Thompson, Fishing Benny, how could I forget him? But so they're all gone, right? Cleared, because they're clearly on that panel. Now, the staff of the select subcommittee as well, also included. So then we got to say, well, who are they by name? Were they on the payroll? Did they get a paycheck, a billing receipt? Were they included in an accounting? Who is that explicitly? We don't really know. As provided by HR 503. All right, so that gives us some clarity on that. But here's where it gets a little bit less clear. And the police officers from the DC Metro Police Department or the U.S. Capitol Police who testified before the select committee. So is that public testimony in front of all of America during one of their little stupid episodes of their 7-part series or whatever it was? Did they have to come out, publicly testify? Did they testify in a deposition during one of these interviews? Who does it apply to? Because we definitely saw those for like the insurrection Avengers with Fanone and the other guy who ran for Congress and lost, pounding the table, Fanone, all these guys. Right? They testified. But what about Lieutenant Byrd, the officer who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt? We don't think he testified. So he may not be covered by this. And we look this up here because if you go over and pull up the January 6th final report, this is what it looks like. An 845-page document filled with garbage and lies. We just do a little bit of a control F over here, and we try to find Byrd, B-Y-R-D. Search for that. You can see in the top right, nothing showing up for Byrd. But we'll look for Babbitt. Of course, Babbitt will show up in here. Says at some point, first finding, Trump's chief of staff and Trump were informed that someone had been shot, Ashley Babbitt, fatally shot. But they don't care about that shooting. They care about this. There's no indication that that impacted Trump's state of mind. Okay, so didn't really investigate that shooting per se. Then there's another footnote. They just cite the source. Another one, another footnote, and another footnote. So in other words, they're not really investigating the shooting. They're just investigating the shooting's effect on Trump. We continue on. Here you can see there's another subsection. I don't know how they're going to retake the Capitol building at one point, one agent wrote another. At 2:44, a Capitol police officer shot a rioter. Capitol police officer was Lieutenant Byrd, but they didn't name him. Named Ashley Babbitt. A handwritten note dashed off onto the White House pocket card and preserved another note. Again, they're focused on Trump. This wasn't about getting to the bottom of January 6th at all. This was about incriminating Trump. This was like a public indictment. So Byrd didn't come up on that. So did they interview him for this? I don't think so. Here's another one. Members of Congress can be seen evacuating when someone shot Ashley Babbitt. Members of staff were just feet away when she tried to crawl through the house. Then they evacuated and they were escorted to safety. Show several people on the ground, and that's it. That's all we got on Ashley Babbitt. And then finally, the last mention of this is at page 691 at the very end. Minority Leader McCarthy left. Then someone, again, a U.S. Capitol Police officer fatally shot Ashley Babbitt. Members and staffers were just feet away when she tried to get through the door, and then they evacuated. There's no investigation into Ashley Babbitt. So from this conversation, what we see in this document doesn't seem like Lieutenant Byrd talked to them at all. So he is probably not somebody who would have testified in the January 6th proceedings, and therefore should not be considered to be pardoned, in our opinion. And if he wants to say that he was pardoned in any way, shape, or form, then he can assert that after he's been indicted. Now, let's also take a look at what's happening elsewhere, because in other Trump prosecutions, Jack Smith is still losing. He is not a real boy. He's resigned from the DOJ, probably packing his bags to flee the country, maybe going back to The Hague where he belongs. But you can see Judge Cannon in the Florida classified documents case issued an order granting President Trump's motion to stop the publication of Volume 2 of Jack Smith's garbage report. saying you're not going to release it. That came out on the 21st. Trump is now, of course, running the DOJ. And so this is one final right into Jack Smith's pathetic attempt to rig another election. Here's what Judge Cannon said. Read it and weep, Jack. This cause becomes before the court because President Trump filed an emergency motion to preclude the release of Volume 2, the classified documents report. Now, as narrowed by the court's prior order in Volume 1, this motion now seeks to stop Jack from releasing this to the congressional individuals. She said, I reviewed this, okay? They gave me a copy of this, and I read it. It contains voluminous and detailed discovery about the allegations in this criminal case. And this case is still pending because they've got two other co-defendants, even though the prosecution against Trump has been dropped. Carlos de Oliveira and Walt Nauta are still being prosecuted by Jack, which was so dumb. Such a dumb thing for them to do because they were small fish related to President Trump, but now they can't release their report because they tried to get other people as co-defendants so they could pressure them to flip and turn on Trump. But it backfired because now their report's not coming out. Following a hearing and a review, Trump's emergency motion is now granted, saying, here's how it came about. In July 2023, Trump and Nauta and de Oliveira were charged by Jack Smith, not a real boy. In July, after extensive briefing, the court dismissed the indictment as to all defendants, saying Jack Smith's appointment violated the Appointments Clause of the United States Constitution. But Jack appealed this, took it up to the Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. Now that appeal is pending as it relates to these two co-defendants because they had to drop the case against Trump because he's the president now. And the DOJ is not going to prosecute the sitting president as a matter of policy. But the appeal and basically the DOJ's defense of themselves saying we can't appoint special counsels like this is still moving forward. So then in November, following the presidential election, Jack Smith sought leave from the 11th Circuit to dismiss its appeal against Trump because Trump won the election. Then on December 30th, attorneys associated with Jack's office, which initiated the prosecution, withdrew. Jack Smith said, we're done, we're off the case. The motion to withdraw noted that the special counsel has now given this back down to the other prosecutors at the Southern District of Florida. On January 6th, Walt and Carlos filed the instant motion to stop the release of Jack Smith's report. They wanted both reports to not be released. Then we got on January 13th a ruling from the 11th Circuit. They severed the two volumes. Volume 1 got separated from Volume 2. And we came back on Volume 2. Volume 1, as we know, was released, but Volume 2 was still restricted. Then they came back on January 17th. Now, Trump has not been sworn in yet, right? The inauguration has not happened, but it's just days away. So they had a hearing. The parties came in. Trump was also there. He was the president-elect at the time. There were arguments. The judge read Volume 2 in camera, which means in her back office, like privately. And she says, look, all parties are agreeing now, expressly and directly, that Volume 2 should not be released publicly. And she confirms that it should not be public. Volume 2 includes detailed and voluminous discovery that's protected. Much of this information has not been made public. It includes myriad references to bait-stamped information, which is like the library tracking system for evidence in cases. Information provided to special counsel in discovery and subject to protective order. It's got interview transcripts, search warrant materials, business records, toll records, video footage, various other records obtained pursuant to the grand jury proceedings, subpoenas. It's got information which Trump has asserted attorney-client privileges over, other evidence, and more. So prior to his separation, Jack Smith left and ran away on January 10th. Special counsel Smith provided defense counsel with an opportunity to review this. But they set very serious conditions. Defense attorneys were required to delete any discovery, and they were unable to cross-reference this report to lodge objections. And so they're maintaining, in other words, you can see it, but not really. So they said, well, we couldn't really make our objections because we couldn't read it and write anything down. Now, current department counsel has secondhand information about the process by which Jack made redactions, but current counsel was not involved in that redaction process. Additionally, right, so Jack Smith's like dumping the bed before he leaves. Special counsel has referred the criminal case to the SDFL, but there appears to be no counsel of record from this district to engage in a detailed discussion of these redactions. Oh, man, Jack. He's like, I'm just going to redact everything, hand it off, and you guys can figure it out. But now the judge is saying, well, you don't know why these redactions were made? Can Jack come and explain it? Oh, he can't. Oh, he left. Oh, well, I guess we're going to have to spend a lot of time getting to the bottom of these redactions then. Now, with respect to the assertions that there is congressional interest in this, because Jack's argument was Congress really needs to see this. She says, why do they need to see it? There's been no subpoena by Congress for any of this. There's no records of even an official request by members of Congress, which is also fun. It's like, why didn't Schumer and Hakeem demand to see it? Just to anchor in a request. They goofed on that. There is, however, a recent letter by some of those same members urging Attorney General Garland, there it is, to release Volume 2 to the public immediately, okay? So they want it publicly released, but even the DOJ is not asking for that, even if doing so requires a dismissal of the charges as to defendants Nada and De Oliveira, okay? And this begs the question, why is it so important? All right, if the prosecution is about getting criminals to a court of law so that justice can be enacted on them, why are the Democrats willing to free two co-defendants to run free in exchange for releasing the report? Why is that? Because it was never about those two guys. It was always about Trump. It was get Trump season. And they're even admitting that, the hack Democrats, in their letter. Finally, although the department refers to general legislative interest about special counsels, they've identified no pending legislation or any other congressional action that requires 4 members of Congress to review the volume now. There's no reason for it. So she goes through some of the legal rules and saying, I have the right to adjudicate this, and so I'm doing that now. A court has an affirmative duty triggered at the beginning of a criminal proceeding to safeguard due process rights, and that's what I'm doing now. The local rules help me decide how I can do this and how confidentiality works. And even the Justice Manual talks about it as well. Now, never before, writes Judge Cannon, never before has the Department of Justice, prior to the conclusion of criminal proceedings against a defendant, and absent a litigation-specific reason as appropriate in the case itself, never have they sought to disclose outside the department a report prepared by a special counsel containing substantive and voluminous case information. Never happened until now. Like many things that's been going on in this country until recently. According to Biden's DOJ, this in-camera disclosure, like this private release to 4 members of Congress, is necessary right now, before the conclusion of criminal proceedings, because Garland has limited time left in his tenure as the head of the department, and he wants to comply with historical practice, like that's it, and there's legislative interest in that. Judge Cannon says, these statements do not reflect well on the department. Oh, that's a scolding. Okay, so just to be clear. That's like, man, she's pissed, all right? Not happy. There is no historical practice of this, liars, of providing special counsel reports to Congress, even on a limited basis pending conclusion of criminal proceedings. In fact, she says, I did my research. There is not one instance of this happening until now. During the argument before this court, counsel misleadingly referenced congressional testimony by special counsel Weiss in 2003 as an example of this historical practice. She says, when did you do this? When did you guys do this? And they said, well, 2023. She looked it up. She says, no, you didn't, you liars. But special counsel Weiss, after opposition by the DOJ, ultimately agreed to testify on limited matters, repeatedly refusing to answer questions about this to stop the prejudice against other people. Now here, there's been no subpoena from Congress for this volume. There's no indication that any legislative activity is going to be impacted by this. There's no memorialization of any conditions. And indeed, there's been no record provided by Congress to review any of this. And so to the contrary, some of the same members to whom the department wishes to show this, right? This is Jack Smith's department. They've urged Garland to release this to the public immediately. And they offer no valid justification why they should release this to Congress while the case is pending. Now, meanwhile, on the other side, there are two people who are still criminal defendants in this case. They've got a live criminal appeal happening right now. Jack's office has not sought leave to dismiss the appeal that was initiated by Jack, and there's been no indication by any government official that any of this is going to be dismissed at all. These defendants retain due process rights. Walt and Carlos, they have due process rights, and the department nevertheless insists on violating those. For what? A good faith commitment? No. And if Volume 2 is released in whole in part, they say, well, they don't need to worry because this court can cure any damages. That flounders, says Judge Cannon. Given the very strong public interest in this criminal proceeding and the absence of any enforceable limits on the proposed disclosure, she's saying, I can't force Congress not to leak this stuff. There's a reasonable likelihood that review by members of Congress will result in public dissemination, she nailed it, of all or part of the entire volume. That reasonable likelihood risks substantial prejudice to the due process rights of the defendants who remain subject to the protective order in this case. And so this court lacks any means to stop Congress from sharing this stuff. And you've given us no reason why this is worth gambling with their rights. The bare wishes of Merrick Garland with, quote, limited time in office to comply with a non-existent historical practice of releasing reports in the middle of a criminal proceeding is not a valid reason. And surely it does not override the obvious constitutional interest of these defendants in this case. Even less clear is why the department would defend this position, notwithstanding its own justice manual, which expressly directs against disclosing substantive information in a criminal case unless and until there's actually been a finding of guilt. And so, man, she just wrecked the Jack Smith team and the DOJ, wrecked in those paragraphs. And so accordingly, under any balancing of relative harm, Trump wins, whether measured against traditional factors or else. This is not being released. It presents an unacceptable risk of prejudice to them and says prosecutors play a special role in our system and they're entrusted and expected to do justice. The DOJ's position on this motion has not been faithful to that obligation. Boom. Blown out. Okay? Entrusted and expected to do justice. DOJ hacks just got obliterated and deserve every bit of it. So Trump wins. Volume 2 and the requests to stop it from coming out are now granted. Of course, a lot of this is moot now because Trump is now in office. But Garland or his successors or anybody else in the DOJ office are not leaking, do not share this report anywhere. This order remains in effect no later than 30 days after conclusion of this. I want a status report, says the judge. Trump, you're not going to be allowed to intervene in this, but doesn't matter because you won anyways. Signed by Judge Eileen Cannon. Great filing from the judge, obliterating the corrupt DOJ. And this is a scolding like you don't see often. She's reaming into them. And those are Jack's team and the follow-up prosecutor's team. So Trump has a good basis to dismiss all of those people, get rid of them, and the new people who are taking over this case can make decisions on what happens next. Now, similarly, the DOJ is being cleaned out as we speak. Here is what CNN was reporting.
Now to a major shakeup at the U.S. Justice Department, sidelining top prosecutors. Our senior justice correspondent, Evan Perez, is on the story for us. Evan, who is out and why?
Well, Wolf, this is what the retribution that Donald Trump had promised before during the time he was campaigning.
It's not retribution, you lunatic. He won the election. Everybody changes the DOJ when they come in. Retribution is firing people who broke the law. So this is a change that is allowed and is authorized by the American people. Calling it retribution like it's some outside of the norm offensive attack on the DOJ is propaganda from CNN.
The Justice Department, of course, as you know, the Justice Department brought 2 criminal cases against the president, and now he wants to make sure that the Justice Department can never do anything like that again. And what we've learned is that there are at least 20 career officials who have gotten reassignment notices. These are people who were working in the National Security Division, people working in international extraditions, people working in immigration matters. All have been told that in the next couple of weeks, they need to show up to be reassigned at new roles. And so these are career officials that would normally, Wolf, be protected by the civil service rules in this country. Up to 120 days that you're supposed to not be able to get reassigned when a new administration turns over. That is not the case in what is happening right now. We also know, Wolf, that there's been some other officials, career officials, who've been sidelined at some of the U.S. attorney's offices around the country.
Do you think it's appropriate to have Trump have the people who prosecuted him working for him? CNN, do you think that's reasonable to do? You can cite your little regulations and your constitutional norms or whatever you say is historical practice. You guys breached historical practice. Never before in American history has the DOJ prosecuted a presidential candidate who was a former president, who was a leading contender to be the president again. So those prosecutors who were in there, they have to go immediately. They are insurrectionists to the sitting president. They try to imprison him and destroy his life. They cannot be allowed to stay. The fact that you guys are going to spend even time on this shows how desperate you are.
The prominent ones, including here in Washington, the D.C. U.S. Attorney, where the career official who was serving as the acting U.S. Attorney has been replaced by Ed Martin.
Good.
He is a MAGA activist, someone who was working on the Stop the Steal movement back in 2020. Of course, that's the thing that ended up with people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th. There's also another change at the Eastern District of New York. John Durham, who's the son of the former special counsel John Durham, he's been assigned to be the acting U.S. Attorney there. Danielle Sassoon has been moved to be the acting U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. Well, as part of these changes yesterday, also the Deputy Attorney General, career agent at the FBI, Paul Abate, he was told to essentially, he was pushed out where the Trump administration brought in 2 new internal FBI officials to serve both as acting director of the FBI and deputy director. Well, a lot of changes coming. We expect that there are more to come in the coming days.
I suspect you are right. More changes to come. A major shakeup, clearly, at the U.S. Justice Department. Evan Perez, thank you very much.
Good. Bye. Get out. Good riddance. Hopefully it's the start of much more to come. All right. Now, we know what is inside this letter. President Trump discovered a letter after Peter Doocy prompted him saying, Mr. President, we know you're busy signing all of these executive orders, but have you looked inside that Resolute desk to see if Joe left you a little love note in there? Trump discovered it, and now we know what is inside of it. And here is how that exchange went down.
President Trump, did President Biden leave you a letter?
He may have. Wait. Don't they leave it in the desk? I don't know. Oh.
What's in there?
Thank you, Peter. It could have been years before we found it. Wow. Thank you.
Can you say on the outside?
Maybe we should all read it together.
Let's read it.
Well, maybe I'll read it first and then make that determination.
That sounds great.
Peter, thank you very much. I may not have seen this for months.
Happy to help with the passing of the torch.
I did. I left him one in the desk just like this.
What are you talking about in the limo?
Unification of our country. You know, I didn't know that he gave a pardon to his family because he did it during my speech.
He didn't tell you in the limo?
No, he didn't tell me. No. He did it. They released it during my speech. During my speech. So all I could do was say, excuse me, I'd like to come back and speak some more. So, no, we were surprised by that. It's bad precedent, obviously.
Where are you thinking on tariffs on Mexico?
All right, so he got the letter, and we were wondering if he was going to read the letter in front of all of us. Here was another angle of it. The contents of the letter have now been released, but here's just another angle of him pulling it out.
President Trump, did President Biden leave you a letter?
He may have. Wait.
Great.
Don't they leave it in the desk?
Didn't even look.
I don't know. Oh.
Hey, there it is.
What's in there?
Thank you, Peter.
It's like a birthday surprise.
Wow.
All right, so here it is. He shows it to the camera.
Maybe we should all read it together.
All right, so now we have the contents. They have been revealed. Here is what Peter Doocy is sharing with us. Officially, the letter is as follows. We can exclusively report for the first time anywhere the contents of President Biden's letter to President Trump. Here's what it says. Dear President Trump, you know how Biden says, as I take leave of this sacred office, I wish you and your family all the best in the next 4 years. The American people and people around the world look to this house for steadiness in the inevitable storms of history. And my prayer is that in the coming years will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace for our nation. May God bless you and guide you as he, capital, has blessed and guided our beloved country since our founding. Joe Biden, 1/20/2025. And my prayer is that in the coming years will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace. Is that, we should probably delete that, right? That word in. And my prayer is that the coming years will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace for our nation. So I don't know if that was a transcription error from Doocy or Joe Biden. Whoever wrote that for him left that in there, but I think I'd get rid of that. But you can also see, we don't have any indication whether this was written in crayon or like colored pencils, or if Joe drew a little sun and flower with sunglasses on it or anything like that in between his dessert time. But Trump, of course, got the letter. Doocy was telling us a little bit more about what happened when he was asked about this on with Fox News, and here's what he had to say about it.
I'm interested to know, was that the entirety of the letter? I'm looking right now on my phone at images of past letters, and they tend to be a little longer, 3, sometimes 4 paragraphs, going into detail. That's a very gracious letter that Biden left, but was that the entirety of it?
That was the entirety of the letter, yes. Handwritten by President Biden on his personal stationery, just one side of one page.
Another question for you. This comes, and I think this is important context for our viewers. He penned this letter, and I'm wondering if you know the timeline of Biden penning this letter. As I understand, it was on the day of the inauguration. So he pens this letter, and he rides off with President Trump, and then he pardons members of his family in a way in which President Trump would have found out about it in the aftermath of his speech. So it's a gracious letter, but it comes on the heels of maybe an acrimonious decision intended to be shielded from the current president.
And I don't know the exact timeline, but to your point, it's possible that he used the same pen to sign the pardons and then write this note to President Trump.
Wow, Peter, thank you very much. That is history that you just made. Very interesting.
It is history. Yep.
All right, so Doocy got the inside scoop on the letter. Joe Biden, barely functional, writes a barely functional letter. Now, Trump is going to be having a full interview with Sean Hannity. Here's a first preview sit down of Trump from inside the Oval.
Let's talk about the moment you walked back in this office, this desk, this room, your carpet. How'd you feel?
Well, it was a lot of work. And as you know, I felt that we shouldn't have had to necessarily be here. Could have been done. A lot of work could have been it would have been over. We wouldn't have inflation. We wouldn't have had the Afghanistan disaster. We wouldn't have October 7th with Israel, where so many people were killed, and you wouldn't have a Ukraine war going on. But with all that being said, I think it's bigger. It's bigger than if it were more traditional.
Yeah, probably a pretty vindicating feeling to be walking back in there after 4 years of hell. And so we'll look forward to more reaction from the president when the full interview is released. And of course, we've got one final update on the day, and then a quick update on Mark Milley and some pardons, because we kind of looked that one up too. But let's talk about this one, because this one is getting bad for Kamala and co. Backhand Doug now being blamed for Kamala's loss, and Kamala better be careful. She's now calling him Deadweight, and I guess his new nickname is now going to have to be Deadweight Doug instead of Backhand Doug. But we know Backhand Deadweight Doug doesn't like to be insulted, and so now that he's got a new insult being lobbed from his wife, better keep an eye on Kamala. Hopefully things don't get a little spicy there. Now, Kamala was all smiles and affections for second gentleman Backhand Doug in the immediate aftermath of her crushing election defeat. But now that Trump's been sworn into office, for sore loser Harris, it's all about the blame game, and her target is now flipped to deadweight husband. Oh, man. One source exclusively told the Daily Mail that there's plenty of blame to go around as far as Kamala is concerned. As she weighs her political future, maybe run for governor in California, she's trying to figure out what to do with Doug. Quote comes in, says, Doug did Kamala no favors during the election. Frankly, he looked like a hypocritical A after the bombshells that he had got his child's nanny pregnant while married to his first wife, and then assaulted his ex-girlfriend with a backhand on the heels of his I Am Women crusade. Remember that whole scam? Despite their brave and united front, things are not hunky-dory between the two. And word is that the husband of California girl Kamala has already signed up for a job with another Big Apple law firm. So he's split, man. He's like, I'm going across the country. She's in LA. He's like, yeah, New York, that's great. I'll love to work there. At Monday's inauguration, the couple presented a united front, though their expressions remain grim. There's Joe falling asleep at the wheel again. There's Backhand Doug looking a little angry. What'd you call me, Kamala? He's gearing up for one. You can see the fury in his eyes. He still has his ring on, though. Here's more. Harris was wearing a black pantsuit with exposed zippers. Who had the job to look for those? Sat stoically throughout the ceremony. She was seen crossing her wrists and pinching the program in her fingers, saying, this deadweight, I should be getting this inauguration. This should be me. Emhoff similarly matched the disdain on his wife's face. Now, what is he's got to be blaming her. I mean, everybody else blames her for being such a terrible candidate, but she blames everybody else. It's wild. The couple left the Capitol together, briefly shaking hands with Trump, but now that she's been defeated, she's trying to figure out what to do with him. What can you do? Divorce him? I don't know. Emhoff famously stepped away from his career, calls himself a wife guy, and then they all did the White Dudes for Harris, which was the most pathetic thing you've ever seen. And they all have to live with that. That's what's so fun about the White Dudes for Harris thing, is that they have to own that. Like you have to always admit, like, you were a white dude for Harris. Wow. What a shame that you did that to yourself. I was with her last week when she was signing her desk, and I didn't backhand her then, said Doug. So he's working on his anger management. She told me a bunch. Of course, we know the backstory there. There's Doug with the ex who he violently abused on the street corner. But now we know that the Biden crime family is not out yet. So Kamala is having problems with Doug. Biden and their family and everybody who supported the Biden crime family are also going to be under scrutiny from Congress. So the investigations will continue.
Mr. Speaker, to potentially have any type of congressional
action on the pardons that President Biden issued over the last couple of days?
It was shocking. I mean, it was shocking what President Biden did on the way out, pardoning his family for more than a decade of whatever activity, any nonviolent offenses. It was breathtaking to us. I don't think that's anything like that's ever been anticipated. And by the way, go look at the tape. 4 years ago, when it was just implied that President Trump might do something similar, they were apoplectic. Joe Biden himself, Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer, roll the tape. They all said that would be crazy and unconscionable, and now they're cheering it along. To us, it is disgusting. To us, it probably proves the point, the suspicion that, they call it the Biden crime family. If they weren't the crime family, why do they need pardons, right? Look, there's a lot of attention that's going to be paid to this, and I think that is appropriate, and we will be looking at it as well. So, yeah.
All right, that is Mike Johnson explaining they're going to continue to look into this, and of course, we hope they do. Now, other people who are behind a lot of this inquiry, James Comer and Jim Jordan were also on with Hannity, talking through what's coming next.
How much money did the Biden family make?
The family took in $27 million from our adversaries around the world. They never could say, even when we brought them in for depositions and interviews, what they actually did to receive the money. Then we found, going through their bank records, that they had another $8 million in loans that they never paid back, never paid any interest on or anything. So that's $35 million.
I want that loan. Can I have that loan?
Yeah, right. Wouldn't we all?
I think everybody here would like to. And you expose all of this.
Loan.
Now, I would argue that he forgot one person, himself.
Well, what we said in our investigation was that we found 10 different Biden family members, including Joe Biden, profited from the influence peddling schemes. The money would come from a wire from a foreign adversary, usually a foreign oligarch. In some cases, we believe the country of China.
An oligarch. Didn't Joe Biden warn us about oligarchs? Aren't there Elena Baturina, wasn't she an oligarch?
Yes.
The guy in Kazakhstan, the people in Ukraine, the people in China.
Romania.
A lot of oligarchs the Bidens are friends with.
The money would then go through a series of shell companies. Then it would be laundered down, and then the 10 different Biden family members would receive incremental payments. And ironically, 6 of the pardons came from family that received payments that had been laundered. This isn't my word, Sean. These are the words of 6 different banks. They were laundering money through shell companies that the Biden families received. He pardoned them preemptively, and the only place in the world the spouses were ever named was in our investigation in the Oversight and Judiciary Committee. We named those spouses by name. The media, other than your show, Sean, and thank you for being the platform to get this out. Thank God your ratings are higher than MSNBC and CNN combined.
Oh, thank God, too.
The American people.
I second that.
Yeah. The American people saw it.
Thank you. You guys did the digging, the hard work, and you exposed the Peter Schweitzer deserves a lot of credit, too.
Absolutely.
He wrote the book Secret Empires. President Trump signed this weaponization of government has to stop. Also revoking 51 former Intel officials that knew nothing about Hunter's laptop and tried to interfere in an election. Jim Jordan, you were there. You investigated every part of this. Didn't Hunter's laptop talk about half his income going to Pops?
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't there a WhatsApp message to the big CEFC?
Yeah. Right.
Didn't Joe's home repairs get paid for by Hunter Biden, according to emails with their economic guru, Eric Sherwin, if I'm not mistaken?
Yep, all that took place. But what I really think was important today is President Trump did what he said he would do when it came to pardons and people, the defendants of January 6th, and Joe Biden didn't. Joe Biden told us he would never pardon his family, and yet he did all of them. Joe Biden said, there would no pardons needed. We just heard it for folks who were involved with the January 6th committee, and yet he did it. So Joe Biden did exactly opposite what he told us he was going to do. President Trump kept his word, did exactly what he said. I think that's the big takeaway from the actions we see from both the outgoing president and, of course, our new president.
Here's the big question. Is this over? Because my understanding, Alan Dershowitz's understanding, is once you get a pardon, you no longer have the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. If they go before your committees, every one of these pardoned family members, don't they have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help them God?
There's a number of things we want to look at. Everything's on the table, but I really think one of the keys is the report we got just right before, just a few weeks ago, was with the 26 confidential human sources. 26 confidential human sources here on January 6, 2021, 17 inside restricted space,
At
4
least.
in the Capitol. 2 of those 4 in the Capitol were tasked to be here by the FBI. I think there are all kinds of questions we have for those
I have 5
individuals.
people that said Trump authorized the use of the Guard days before. So did the Capitol Police Chief, by the way, begging for the National Guard. In writing, Muriel Bowser denied the use of the National Guard. It was her authorization. Pelosi did nothing. They never brought in the Sergeant of Arms. Liz Cheney needed hers, in my view, too.
Not to mention the number of false things that committee put out on me, on you, on so many people.
Little old me?
Yeah, exactly. So, I think
They
there's
did.
some unanswered
Sean's
questions we have
texts
to
and all
get
the
to there.
things.
So we will look at that.
And you'll do that,
on the
too?
table.
Absolutely.
All right. You guys have been rock stars. Thank you for what you're doing. I would let the American people know the truth, pardoned or not. And let's see if they tell the truth when they have to, under oath.
All right, so good segment there from Sean. Good to hear from those two guys and see what their take is on this. Now, a question that has come up here before has been about Mark Milley and whether or not he can still be court-martialed, right? The question that's coming up a lot is, what are the other vectors of attack to go after the criminals who have been pardoned? Mark Milley is somebody who got pardoned by President Biden. We think in many ways January 6th points back to him because we know that National Guard and other military assets went to protect their houses, like the Joint Chiefs got their houses protected on January 6th, but the rest of the military was not mobilized on time, and you can get that information from Stephen Sun's book. So why did they do that? And why did they not follow Trump's direct order, which was to make sure it was secure, that he gave to Acting Secretary of Defense Miller at the time, right? All these people were in play. So questions, of course, abound. If Milley got a federal pardon, one question has been, can he still be court-martialed? And I think the answer is no. And here's why I say that. This is Clint Lawrence. He was a person who was charged and court-martialed for allegedly killing 2 Afghanistan civilians. And the person who granted him a pardon that alleviated him from that military court-martial was President Trump. He did that back on November 15, 2019. The story on this one was that this person named Clint Lawrence, charged with war crimes, first lieutenant in the infantry, 2 counts, unpremeditated murder, after he ordered his soldiers to open fire on 3 Afghan men who were on a motorcycle. Found guilty by a court-martial in 2013 for 20 years in prison, later reduced to 19 years. He was confined at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas for 6 years. Then conservative commentators, guys like Sean Hannity and others, advocated for a pardon. Lawrence got the pardon by Trump in 2019 and was released from custody. Went through a bunch of appeals, but you can see, having exhausted his direct appeals, he was court-martialed for the 19 years. 3 days later, though, after all the appeals and his post-conviction relief attempts went away, Trump issued a full and unconditional pardon, right? And the court-martial conviction evaporated. So then he was released from custody. Here's a copy of the full and unconditional pardon, just like Mark Milley would have gotten. So it's a preemptive pardon, okay? Clint Lawrence would have, he was already convicted and court-martialed, and the pardon alleviated him from that. Mark Milley, right, by contrast, has not been convicted of anything. But if you combine this principle with the other principle, when Ford pardoned Nixon, Nixon was not convicted either. Right? The pardon power is very expansive and plenary. So what that means is, unfortunately, Mark Milley not going to be somebody who is likely to be court-martialed. I don't think any prosecutor in the military is going to pick this up and move forward with it. But that being said, the follow-up question is, if there is no possibility of self-incrimination, if you cannot be prosecuted at the federal level, not prosecuted at the state level because the Supremacy Clause, can't be prosecuted under the Uniform Code of Military Justice because the military would be under the commander-in-chief, the head of the executive branch, the pardon power goes to the president, which would be overarching over all of that. There's no penalty that can come his way. So therefore, he cannot invoke the privilege against self-incrimination. And when he gets a subpoena to come and testify, he can't sit there and say, I'm invoking the fifth. Instead, what he'll say is, I don't remember, I don't recall. And he can be made to be shown a liar. And so that's the update on Mark Milley. Of course, we're going to keep our eye on this and see if there's other efforts or other attempts to get to the bottom of these criminals and their behavior. Of course, we'll be here. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends. And so some good updates there. If you're just joining us, a quick recap. Now it's time to hear from you, but we got some updates. We just talked about the blackout that's happening across the agencies. They're all having to reorient themselves to the new administration, and the deportations are already well underway. So at our very opening segment, we talked about the latest things that are happening, and it's happening quickly. Border Patrol agents saying they're being told summarily deport them, no more notices to appear, no more court dates. The border is now closed. We also talked about how Trump came to his J6 pardon decision and how he just sat down and said, F it, release them all. And then it happened, and we're glad that it did. A lot of reaction on this from Chutkan and Schumer and the rest of the whiners until Rubio and Burchett came out and delivered the ruckus back towards them. Enrique Tarrio's out of custody, and Judge Cannon delivered the final blow to Jack Smith's pathetic attempt to smear the president. That report is not coming out. Trump got his hands on that Biden letter, and Ducey published the letter. We read through that, and we talked about how Kamala and backhand Deadweight Doug are having a tough time in their marriage in the aftermath of their political obliteration. Some good updates on the pardon stuff. And now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. And thank you to everybody who supported us with amazing super chats. Thank you to our welcome to our new members, and thank you to those who are inviting new members in. We had a great members only morning stream today. It was a ton of fun, and you can become a member and join our morning stream by going to watchingthewatchers.locals.com to become a member on Locals, or by joining on YouTube and clicking the button to become a member on YouTube. I also want to let you know that we have posted our watch party pictures. And so if you want to see any of those watch party pictures, they're over at watcherlodge.com. If you go over there, this is now open, so everybody can click this button. It says party pictures. We had a ton of fun. You can see Jack Mack was here. This is what it looked like in the event. Jack Mack in the house. Great to see everybody. There's Jacob Chansley and more friends there. I posted a bunch of these photos. You can see these were some of our friends inside. There's your boy there. And I think we had a ton of pictures. So you can check it out. Go to watcherlodge.com. There's my brother Joey. There's people pouring in. We're getting ready for it. That's what it looked like on the big screen. There's our friend with Trump, the Trump hat, and Jacob there. There's our friends from personalbrand.com who were there giving a little bit of a wrap up, just a quick, 2-second talk, and thanking some people for putting it together. There's Chansley, shouting out Chansley, who was there. So check it out. Go to watcherlodge.com. You can see all the photos. And my friends, if you joined us there, they're all publicly posted. So check those out. This was this gal who was there. And there's Jacob. I love this photo. Jacob Chansley. I thought that was a great photo with our friends there. So go check those out. Oh, and this was a Medal of Honor winner. And it was great to talk to him. I'm going to try to get him on the show. There's Jacob. There's Joe Polish. And Trump and RFK were there. You can see that. They joined us. Trump and RFK. There's President Trump. And there's RFK. So you can check those photos out. Watcherlodge.com. And thank you to everybody who joined and made it just an amazing and awesome day. And if you have any photos and you joined us, post them there. You can post them in that thread. So just go at them and we can all share our photos. And if you are in those photos, say hello. Come and say hello. Drop them in there. All right. So, my friends, let's say hello to you. Let's see what you have to say about all of this and more. I saw some great comments come through. Starting with this one from Donut. It's Happy Hump Day Wednesday. Indeed, indeed. It's all downhill, the back of the hump from here. Hey, M. Buffy, thank you for becoming a supporter. Grab the members only stream from this morning. Members, tomorrow we're going to be 1 hour earlier. I've got an event tomorrow and Friday. So we're going to be 1 hour earlier for Membo streams tomorrow and Friday. We'll see you there. M. Buffy. Sportfish says, Rob, since presidential pardons impact federal charges only, can white rage Millie still be subjected to a court-martial? Civilian and military courts are different. And so Sportfish, hopefully that final little bit there about Clint Lawrence explain that yeah, I think it precludes charges against him. We won, says more win, please. Oh, we're going to be here for it. We won. Thank you for the very nice dono. Really generous of you. We're not tired of winning. It was a little disorienting at first. We're like, 200 executive orders? What on earth? But that's just because we were not acclimated yet. It's like, when you get on a boat or something, it takes you a minute. Like, whoa, takes you a minute. That's how it was. We were used to just losing constantly all the time. And now we're winning. It's just like, what's happening? Is this real life? Yeah, it's real life, little kid. Yeah, it is. One old guy's opinion says the pendulum swing or the equal and opposite reaction is what the Democrats are fearing. The tat is about to slap the tit. Wow. This show just turned into PG-13. One old guy's opinion says you can say illegal aliens like it says in the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952. Exactly. We're just citing the law. We follow what the law says because this is a legal show. Glocky says federal immigration laws are pretty wild. I had no idea that if you harbor an illegal alien and said illegal commits a murder under federal immigration laws, you can face the death penalty. And there are a ton of other immigration laws that Democrats routinely break that have serious prison time or asset seizures on the books. Here's 8 U.S. Code 1324 about aliens. Glocky says, how does this headline even make sense? How do illegal aliens impact their firefighting budget unless they lie about where their tax dollars are going? Trump's order to cut off funding to sanctuary cities could threaten fire relief. Okay. All right. Then I guess it does. That's what happens. Why is your fire department embedded with illegal immigration money, illegal aliens? One old guy says, if you read the terms used in the INA, it says alien. It's not smart to use terms on legal charges if you don't use the terms in the U.S. Code. From one old guy, good to see you. Sharpie guy says, it's definitely been a memorable week, Rob. Trump's inauguration. Good job, by the way. Thank you, Sharpie guy. And snow in San Antonio. Wow, I know everybody's sharing all their snow photos, and we don't have a stinking snowflake. Not one. Thank you, Sharpie guy. I hope you're enjoying it. One old guy's opinion says AOC is a crazy 304. Like a 404 website, kind of? Like it's just not resolving. That's pretty fair. All right, this is an interesting photo of Joe in his boxers, so we'll just skip over that one. But thank you, Spuds, for that. We can't, it's disgusting. Uncle 60 says, anchor kids must file CRBA with the Department of State, which documents the child's citizenship status at birth if at least one parent is a U.S. citizen. Yeah, and that makes sense, right? If one person is a citizen, then you connect that to that parent, right? That's how most other countries do it, not America. America's just like geographic. Others are not. You got to have some blood relation to another citizen. It's not just geography. Very few countries are as insane as our interpretation of the 14th Amendment, which is wrong. B.H. Williams says, and the J6ers were separated from their families. They were separated from their families, AOC. She wasn't standing outside the jails crying in a stupid outfit for a photo shoot for them. Knox says, hey, happy Wednesday, all. I have not seen any roundups yet, and we still do have a horse patrol in Houston. Not a lasso in sight. From Knox. Yeah, Knox, you guys were in the thick of it last time with that, the guy with the lariat, right? The Haitian whipping scandal. That was all fake too. Thanks for the report, Knox. One old guy says AOC's mad because her Green New Deal got canned, amongst other things. 200 Watt Studio says, wasn't AOC a bartender? What happens to people who are thought to be driving while drunk? Aren't they detained? Great question, 200 Watt Studio. Asking her to think past her stupid talking point into the next logical step is way too much for her to figure out. John McGarvey, good to see you, brother, says, hey, breaking, the Laken Riley Act is on the way to President Trump's desk for his signature. More winning! It just keeps coming, my friends. Thank you, John, for updating us on that. Ray Ronk says, many are asking, 20 J6ers are still hostage in the D.C. jail, and at least one other was ordered to jail today by a Democrat judge who decided to disregard the pardon. That's from Ray Ronk. So I don't know the details on those cases, and I've seen various reports on it, and I don't know what's old or what's not, but today is the 22nd. That pardon was issued on the 20th. If they're still in custody for those charges, okay, if they got out and got a new charge or something, like somebody got arrested for something else they did, the pardon doesn't immunize them from new crimes, but if they're still in custody related to anything from J6, they're being falsely imprisoned and their civil liberties are being violated, and the government should be sued into oblivion for that. One old guy's opinion says, and the people who are housing them should be prosecuted. One old guy's opinion says, Democratic Socialists of America, AOC's true political party. Read about him. It's Marxism. She is a Marxist, and openly, I think. Combat Boot Mom says, why do people continue to refer to our form of government as a democracy? We're a dang gum constitutional republic. And I think they say it because there's a democratic kind of functionality to it, in that we vote and the people have some say in certain things, like referendums and other matters. But you're right? We do elect, it's a representative form of a government. But I think the reason the Democrats, to basically question, I think the reason the Democrats are constantly pushing to this democracy thing is because they want majority rule. They want the tyranny of the majority. They want the popular vote, right? They want the turnout centers to be their little babies so that they can just vote for certain policies and continue to rig elections to seize power. That's why they call it that. It's, as Alexis de Tocqueville talked about, a tyranny of the majority. Art Pollard says, now that Kamala's out of a job, Kamala should be the ex-lax spokesperson, feeling unburdened from what has been. Yeah, well, it feels like she did crap all over America for 4 years, so that would be appropriate. Thank you, Art. Shane says, hey, my friends, like, share this video, and subscribe to this channel, and hit the notification bell, and select all or else. Thank you, Shane, for that comment. What About Me says, Happy New Year, all survived the emergency heart operation. New Year's Eve, life's a gift. What about me? That's tremendous news. Congratulations, brother. Membo for 19 months. Survived the emergency heart op. That's tremendous news. We're glad you're here. Thanks for sharing that with us. Thanks for being here for 19 months. Over 2 babies. We're grateful for you. Hey, Uncle Bozy says, Rob, thank you very much for researching the possible bird effort. I truly appreciate your time and effort. I am relieved. Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think he testified to them. So I don't think he's covered there. What's up? Wookie Elnil says 18 months as a membo. That's 2 full babies. Says lock them up. Argue about it. 3 years and 2 babies. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down, Wookie. In other words, you prosecute them, and if they want to claim that their pardon protects them, then they can make that claim in a court of law. Trump had to fight for his claims of immunity. So if they want to claim that they're immune because of a pardon or privileged because of a pardon, they can duke it out in court. What About Me? Bringing in 5 new membos. It's going to be great to see everybody tomorrow morning. Andy Gorski will be joining us. Kevin Patrick, Rome 13 in the house. Miss Minder Sue, welcome. And Bama Mimi in the house. We'll see you tomorrow morning, new friends. And thank you, What About Me, for bringing them in. This one from Stan Harwell. Says Judge Cannon for the Supreme Court. She's great, man. I'd like to see her move up the chain for sure. Michael McKenna says, I don't see Cassidy Hutchinson in the J6 report. Is she in there? I don't know. I would imagine she is. NY says, Garland in front of Congress repeatedly said that any info on the case or any interim report would be held pending resolution of the court case. Yeah, well, and then he wanted to release it to them. He actually sent it out to them. Hey, Combat Boot Mom is here. Look at that. Combat Boot Mom is here. Bringing in 10 membos. Tango Romeo's joining us. NV Cruiser. We got McCart Studio Creating with Purpose is here. Laura Elizabeth, Ion Energy, Storytime with Knuckles. Cameron W, Daniel Hobbs, Polifos. Karen is my name. And Infinity Project gifted membos courtesy of Combat Boot Mom. Bringing in 10 new amazing membos. NY says, disbarment is handled as a civil action. Jack Smith and his team should all be disbarred for their behavior. Agreed. Evidence from their classified documents case should be enough. I totally agree with that, NY. They know what they were doing. They knew better. They violated their ethics. They should go. One old guy's opinion says they are giving a RRR option. Reassignment, retirement, or removal, which is being fired. Thank you, one old guy. Jeffrey Adams says, when does Trump fire every U.S. attorney as is his right? I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do, but we're seeing reports now, right? We just saw that report from CNN that there are shakeups happening and underway. We want Pam Bondi to get confirmed. Once Pam Bondi's in, I'm sure she's going to have a lot to say about who she wants where, and she'll start reviewing these things. So any minute now, Jeffrey Adams, hopefully any minute. NY says, Democrats want to hide amongst the civil servants, claiming that they're nonpartisans. Yeah, they want to go to the independent agencies, right? Seems like Trump learned his lesson from 16 and is tearing out the weed, root and stem. Glocky shared this from this guy, Nicholas. Says Putin might be trying to extradite Fauci. Well, that'd be fun. Sergi says, I've got a question about the next Supreme Court judge. If Sotomayor retires, you think it would be a good idea for Cannon to get picked? Or is there a conflict? What are your thoughts? Or do I have the pecking order of the next judge wrong? Is that how it works? Well, yeah, there is a pecking order. Usually Supreme Court judges, like if you had to gamble on it, they come from the D.C. Circuit. Generally, I think Kavanaugh came from the D.C. I think they all did. Kavanaugh, Roberts, and Comey Barrett, did they all come from the D.C. Circuit? I think that might be. Amy Coney Barrett may have been from the Mideast Circuit. I'm not sure. I think she may have come from a different circuit, actually. But Cannon's from the Florida Circuit. But Trump elevates people who've done well by him. So I don't think it's out of the order at all. She would get scrutinized hard by the Senate. Okay, like Democrats would have a field day with this, but there might be enough Republicans to squeeze her through, and she's young. We like that she's young, and she's female. Okay, so that's always a big battle. So I like it. Uncle Bozy says, other items in the desk drawer from Joe were Post-it notes, pens with no ink, loose paper clips, open roll of Tums, crayons, a fidget spinner, old ice cream spoons, and more. Gross in there. Marianne Goodman, thank you for becoming a supporter. Very nice to have you. Sergey says, will you cover this story tomorrow morning? Apparently, Putin wants Fauci in Russia to try him for crimes against humanity. I'll look into it. Yeah, if it's a real story, that sounds like a fun one. Severus, what's up, Severus? Bringing in 5 new membos. We appreciate you, Sev. Thanks for doing this. Teresa Shirk is here. Patricia Clark, welcome. D. Watts is in the house. Erroronius is joining us. And Marcia Lee, gifted membos, courtesy of Severus. Thank you, Sev. James Kipp. We hear zero about the left's bombing of the Capitol in 71 or 83. Yeah, didn't Obama's guy, what was his name? The guy with those photos standing on the American flag. Like, the left has really been on one over the last few decades. Hey, Rob on Rumble says, they can't be prosecuted, but money could be taken from them as illegal, like police confiscating money used in crimes like drug money. You're talking about forfeiture, really. You got to be charged with something, or there's got to be some sort of civil claim. They're immunized from the set of facts and circumstances for which they were pardoned. So anything related to that, I think they're immune from. Uncle Bozy says, if it came out that a person Biden pardoned, let's say Schiff, had committed other previously unknown crimes, like, other things against kids, would he be immune from prosecution? No. So the pardon, and let's look at the language of the pardon so we can get specific on it. For any offenses, okay, so they got named for any offenses against the United States they may have committed or taken part in, arising from or in any manner related to the activities or the subject matter of the select committee to investigate the J6 attack. So like, Chomo, would not fall in this protected class. That would be a separate offense, and that would not be something that would be pardoned. Sheila Poo, love this channel and this chat. We love you, Sheila. Stay safe and strong. Eric with the K says, right on, Sheila, and We Won says, thanks. Amazing. Thank you, Sheila, for that. LEG, what's up on locals? Says Clint Lawrence was falsely prosecuted. They had been blowing up troops by riding by on motorcycles with strapped-on bombs. He was brought up and framed during Obama's military, which was always looking to hang troops out to dry. Like the guy that slugged the man who was attacking a child and letting the child go. That guy was also court-martialed. Many generals stood up for Clint, and Trump corrected the wrong on that. Thanks for the background, LEG. Yeah, and that was an illustration, right, of the pardon power. It wasn't necessarily a comment on the case. It was just that if the president does this, it is quite expansive. Coding Light says, as Charlie Sheen would say, we aren't winning, we are by winning. I don't know what that means. I know Charlie Sheen has gotten into a lot of things, so I don't know exactly what that is referencing, but thank you, Coding Light. I'm sure it's fun, whatever it is. Trone, what's up? Maybe it's not fun, actually. Tron, what's up? Adam Schiff and Pelosi did not get a pardon. Well, I think Schiff was on the J6 committee, wasn't he? Who was on the J6 committee? I feel like Schiff was on the committee, but I could be misremembering that. Yeah, so here's everybody. Yeah, Schiff was on it. It was Thompson, Cheney, Zoe Lofgren, Schiff, Aguilar, Stephanie Murphy, Raskin, Luria. I missed Murphy and Luria. Totally irrelevant. Didn't do anything consequential at all. And Kinzinger. Okay, so anybody on that list, they got pardons, including Pencilneck. Mustafa says, what do you think about Elon's Nazi salute? Well, I don't think it was a Nazi salute. I appreciate him passing his heart out to the people in the crowd. And I think it's hilarious how much attention that has gotten. But I don't think Elon is a Nazi, no. But it has captured a lot of attention because that's all they have. Nazis, 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 Nazis. Okay, keep doing it. Uncle Bozy says, we got 3 inches here in coastal North Carolina. My pups are discovering snow. The big girl loved it. The little man hated it. That sounds about right. Probably the closer you get to the snow, there's like an inverse relationship. You're further away. You like it a little bit better. This other guy's just a little bit too down in the snow. One old guy says, type 304 on a calculator and look at the screen upside down. What does it spell? Bo? Bo? B-O-E? I don't know. Rob says, ignoring the J6 pardons by Trump, then ignore Biden's pardons. From Christian Fellowship Rob on Rumble. The Hook is here. Says one of the J6 defendants. Oh, the 4 is an H, not a B. Oh, got it. One of the J6 defendants also had federal charges. Oh, 4 like that, like a 4 like this, not a 4 like this. Got it. One of the J6 defendants had federal charges in Tampa related to a search warrant from the J6 case. Since the search was born from J6, would this case be closed also? Search warrant was for explosives. They found grenades and classified files. He said that these were planted and an illegal length barrel gun. So that's another great question. So, I mean, my argument as a defense attorney would be that that evidence is fruit of the poisonous tree and it cannot be used against him. I would say that he's pardoned from the investigation, from the J6 investigation. And I don't know if I don't know how the case law would ferret out on this, but what they discovered was, but again, yeah, he might have a tough case on that if there's separate crimes because there's this thing called the inevitable discovery. I don't know. My argument as a defense attorney would be that those were derivative of the original charge. They only discovered that criminality because of the original. But Trump isn't saying that they were, he's not dismissing the cases and saying that they were illegal. He's pardoning them. So it's really a different equation. But I would, of course, make the argument that they're kind of in and of the same. In other words, they would not have found the other fruits and instrumentalities of the crimes, this is like the legal language, without the original search, which was J6 related. So his defense attorneys might have some work cut out for them, and that might be an interesting case to follow. Thank you, DeHook, for that one. I'd like to look at the details of that more, but yeah, I mean, if the pardon is only for J6 events, right, it's not going to cover other crimes outside of that. But they only discovered those other crimes because of J6. Yeah. The concept is fruit of the poisonous tree, I think it would be most applicable. But, well, that's a great one to follow. Jay Thomas, what's up? 17 months as a membo, me too, says, I'm so glad Biden is gone. Thank you, Jay Thomas. Me too. One more month. We got 2 babies in the house. Thank you for being here, Jay Thomas. Text Rick says, important work, big dog. Another great episode. Many thanks. Thank you, Text Rick. Man, Big Dog, that's a pretty cool name. I like it. Thank you, Tex Rick. I appreciate it. Eugene Sands. Rob, I watched last night's show live in Ireland. You kept me up until 1:30 a.m. Time well spent. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Eugene. Thanks for hanging out with us, mate, into all hours of the night at 1:30. That's a late night. But we're grateful to be with you. We had a fun time yesterday. Longer stream yesterday, but Trump was on a tear. Rob says, Biden's family members were pardoned. But does that make money they received safe from confiscation, like illegal drug money, confiscated by police? Yeah, well, the drug money is seized as a result of a criminal investigation or criminal charges. Like, it's got to be, like, they don't just come up to you and just take your drug money and walk away. There's some other prosecution or criminal process that's happening. So the forfeiture, like, they raid your house, they take your cars, they take your guns, they take all these things. Maybe they do forfeiture proceedings to take it for the government, right? So they can take your cars and sell it and make money off of it. It's attached to a crime. They don't just take your assets. Sharpie Guy says, Rob, 304 turned upside down reads hoe and not referring to a rake. I'm 74, so I needed to Google it. Yep, AOC is a rake. Sharpie, so 304. See, the problem here is that the 4 is the rounded 4. So that doesn't really look like an H if you flip it upside down. That's where we're having some problems, a disconnect. Spud says, Rob, the pic of Joe wasn't that bad. At least he was wearing boxers. Hey, it wasn't that bad, but nobody wants to see Joe in his boxers. We already saw Joe wreck the country for the last 4 years. So, my friends, those were great comments. Thank you so much for sending those in and supporting our work here. Couldn't do it without you. And thanks for becoming a membo. And for those of you who brought in new membos, thank you for doing that. We'll see you tomorrow on the members only stream. In the morning, we do 2 streams a day, and we'd love to have you join us when we kick things off in the morning. This one came in on X from James Pepper. Says, if General Milley takes the pardon, we can call him out for taking the pardon. We got some wild AOC AI images over there. Ugh. We got Tibarama. Says, I thought treason couldn't be pardoned. And we looked that up, and I think treason can be pardoned. The only thing that cannot be pardoned is impeachment. Pamela B., great question, though. What's up, TJ King? Says, some of the Watergate defendants, oh, this is interesting, were prosecuted and jailed for perjury for, quote, not remembering. Dwight Chapin was asked if he recalled tedious calls from a White House log from years before. He said, I don't remember. They indicted him. So they can indict them too for that I don't remember crap. Why does the CBS News reporter write Mr. Trump instead of President, says Kat? Because they're hacks and they're bitter and they don't want to call him by his rightful title. But we know that. And so, my friends, good to see you there on X and elsewhere. And once again, thank you for sending in those donos and supporting our work. We are now going to go over and do a members only after party with our watchingthewatchers.locals.com friends. If you want to come join us over there, a couple ways you can do that. Just type that into a web browser and become a membo, or download the Locals app. You can also do it on your phone. Download Locals app, find the Watching the Watchers community, and become a membo. Although doing it on the website's better. It's a little less expensive for you and better for us. So watchingthewatchers.locals.com if you want to join us. Otherwise, my friends, we're going to come back for membos in the morning. We'd love to see you there. Before we wrap it up, we want to thank our amazing mods for modding the fort down for us. K-Bean, Donut, Carrie B, Playin' Hooky, Dog Digger, and Janek, making things oh so nice and orderly around here, and we're grateful for them. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. And we are coming back here tomorrow, same time, same place, to get into it again. In order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.